goodness. Good morning, my friends. It is I, Madame Askew, and I'm here with my wonderful friend, special guest, and author, Sharon Skinner. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, it's so nice to be here.
Oh my gosh, it's such a treat to have you. I'm so happy we can finally make this happen. Also, good morning, Lady June Squill. It's so good to have you here this morning. Thank you for joining us. Lady June Squill is here in Tucson with me. And Sharon, you are a local Arizona author yourself, right?
Correct. I live up in Mesa, so I'm a little bit north of y'all. I did live in Tucson for 10 years back in
Oh
the
my
day,
gosh.
so I know your neighborhood a little bit, or what it used to
Yes.
look like.
Well, and we met originally at TusCon. I believe it was at
Mhm.
TusCon. It was either there or Phoenix, but I'm pretty sure it was first at TusCon.
I believe it was Tucson, yes. So that's
Yes.
we consider that our home con. So
Yes.
it's my favorite one. It's so it's just so intimate and nice to just hang out with each other and talk books and talk art
Yes.
and relax. It's a very relaxing con for me.
Absolutely. No, we were just talking about TusCon a little bit last night during our Friday tea, and the Grand Arbiter asked me what made it so special, and I was like, well, it's small. You can meet everyone you wish to meet. You can have real conversation with your fellow creative people, with authors and visual artists and filmmakers. There's so many artists who come to TusCon. Is really a treasured experience. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah, and they keep it small
Yeah.
purposely to do that, which
Yes.
is lovely. And
It
so, and no matter how many panels that they have me on, or how many panels I go to, I don't feel rushed and exhausted. I always feel like I can just take my time and
yeah.
relax into it. It's
Yes.
very different than say a World Con or some of the other bigger cons that we go to.
Yes. No, I love that you bring up WorldCon because we were all at WorldCon this year. It was so lovely. I ran into you and your partner, Bob Nelson,
Bob. Mhm.
from Brick Cave Media, and the beautiful Brick Cave, booth where you were selling books like hotcakes. It was so fantastic to see. Um, I was like on the march the whole time. I was just like going like a mad person the whole time. But it was like TusCon turbocharged is how it felt to me.
Yes, it's a good con. They're all good cons. I enjoy them all but they all have different flavors.
Yeah.
So, and that one was a lot. It
Yes.
was a lot of flavor.
It was a lot. It was like a whole cornucopia of flavor. It was it was
Yeah.
a wonderful feast.
And they had some wonderful presenters and speakers there, and but it was so big that and I needed to be in the vending hall, and it was so large. There were a couple of people who I know online who I had hoped to bump into or find, and I wasn't able to do that, but I was able to go and hear some people speak who I respect and who I wanted to hear from, so that was good.
That part is so lovely. But the being able to connect with your chums is such a gift, and that is something that TusCon really affords us, is the ability to, one of my favorite things, and this happens at least once, is I will run into you and Bob in like the hallway, going between panels or coming out of a panel, and you're headed towards the restaurant and I'm headed towards the restaurant. We're like, well, let's just go together. That sounds nice. We'll just go sit down and catch up. I have time for tea, maybe a meal. It doesn't matter. We sit down, we get to have that like spontaneous, uh, friendly gathering, and to talk about not only the convention, but the projects and the work and that wonderful connection around talking about art that I think is so powerful.
Yes, so
TusCon is great for
conversations
that.
It really is. And those, and you're bumping into people who are doing things other than you. So yes,
Yeah.
there are other writers, but there are also illustrators and creatives like yourself who are doing other things that just kind of rev up my own creativity when I'm there.
Yes. I think that is so important. And it's one of the inspirations behind this conversation, this interview show that I do, is this magical, you know, synergy of talking to fellow artists, whether or not you're in the same field, and the way it feeds your art. And that is something that you do quite a bit of because you're a book coach, you host a podcast, you are teaching people how to write, and you come from this amazing background. uh, I did not realize that you had started in slam poetry, Sharon. Oh my goodness. Like, what a background. Can you, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your start in slam poetry, and do you still do that?
Okay. Well, no, I don't actually do it anymore. But partly that's because I've moved into other things, not because
Mm,
I don't, not because the art form isn't a perfectly fine art form. But the challenge for me when doing slam, and I'll tell you why. Let me back up, and then I'll tell you why I kind of moved out of it.
mm,
Performance poetry is fabulous, right? So I have a theater background. I've been writing since I was in grade school.
mm.
I went through that terrible angsty teenage poetry period, like we all do. Uh, absolutely. And I started poetry really is my background. I fell in love with poetry when I was in, I think, fourth grade. My mother handed me a book called Pocket Full of Verse. And after that, she gave me 101 Most Beloved Poems. And this is where I found The Highwayman and, you know,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Oh, Captain, My Captain, and all these wonderful, wonderful classic poems. And I just fell madly in love with poetry.
Mm,
And I was actually getting I was getting published in some small magazines, in a few bigger ones, a few larger ones, in poetry initially. That's where I really got my start for getting published. And at that same time, I discovered slam poetry. And I had no idea. I thought it was going to be go read your poem, right? Just go stand in front of a microphone, read your poem like an open mic. But it wasn't. It's competitive. It's competitive poetry. There are a group of poets who sign up to perform. They do 3 rounds of poetry. They pick 5 judges in the audience. They score the poems Olympic style, 1 through 10. They throw out the high score, the low score. They add up the 3 middle scores. That's your score for the round. And you can be eliminated if time doesn't allow for a full third round. You can be eliminated along the way. And your highest scoring poet at the end of the night wins. And usually it was everybody threw $1 in the pot, and then the money went to the poet. So the thing about slam poetry is that there are rules. You don't just get up and recite a poem. You have constraints. You can't be more than 3 minutes. You can't use any props. You can't use any costumes. It is performance poetry, but it's performance poetry. It's not about any of the extras. You don't get any extras. You don't get sound effects unless you can make them yourself. So what's great about slam poetry is that it's always facing off with social norming, and it's facing off against inequity, and it seeks justice, and it's a way to speak out and say your piece. It's a very powerful, powerful form of poetry. I didn't win in poetry slams. I don't think I ever won first place in any of them. What I often took home was audience choice,
mm,
audience favorite, things
mm,
like that. So what I was saying came from my heart, and it came from a place of of joy and of love. But most of my slam poetry was just my poetry that I was performing.
Mm.
At some point, I realized that if I was going to win, I would need to write the kind of poetry that wins. And I didn't want to do that. As
Yeah.
much as I love performing my poems, and I had a few that were in that vein that fit with that, but it's not where I wanted all of my work to go. And
Yeah.
so, thank you. Yeah, that's all very sweet. Yes. So I won a lot of I won a lot of little, free pizza and free coffee and things like that because I was audience favorite. So
Yeah.
I did that a lot and I loved that. And that also helped me to focus in on my audience more than
Mm.
on the judges. If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Well, I this is something we touched on this a little bit before getting into the conversation. The desire to do well by your audience, the desire to provide and come through and respect your audience. And I know that in theatre and performing terms, like crowd work and honing in on your audience is really important. You're there, that energy is there. You can look people in the eyeballs depending on the lighting situation. You know the audience, whether it's with you or not. But as an author, you took this theatrical background as a performer, as someone who performed your poetry, participated in slam, and you moved into writing novels. Did that theatrical performance experience of connecting with your audience impact the way that you try and tell stories in your novels and the way you try and present things?
That's a great question. It's an excellent question. And I love you asking it because, yes, I would say that for me, it helps in two ways. One, in knowing who my audience is and being focused on delivering for that audience. That's critical. And that's always critical in writing. And, yes, once it's out of my hands, then it becomes theirs and they see it
Mm.
through their own personal lens. And my expectations fall off at that point. My hopes are that they will find something in it that resonates and that brings them joy, or that they'll close the book at the end and feel seen. That is critical and crucial to me. But what they take away from the book may not be everything I intended or in the way I intended it. And that's art.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
art. And
Yeah.
I talk a lot about if you, and I've said this before, if you're an artist, you're an abstract artist, and you create this beautiful abstract piece, and
Yeah.
someone comes to you and they say, "Oh, I love your art. I bought this piece. I love this piece. I've hung it in my living room. It's my favorite thing in the whole world." And they show you where it's hung and it's hung upside down. What are you going to say?
Right.
I'm going to say, "I'm so glad you love my art." Because they see it in a different way than maybe I put it out there. And the same thing with story and with writing. There are things that people read into it through their own, because of their own experience, their own lens. And so we don't all see the world exactly the same way. And what they take away, that is for them, right? So
Yes.
I have to let go. The other side of that is that as a performer, as someone who did theater for many years, and I was the shy kid. So the fact that I did theater at all, I know makes people, what? But I wasn't me on stage.
Mm.
I could
Mhm.
be someone else. And so I could don this persona, this costume, this other person, get up on stage and do all the things. And then, and I was great with it. And I loved it and I was good at it. And what that has done for me now is that it's very easy for me to slip inside the skin of my characters and give this and provide the story through their viewpoint in a way that's very compelling and very up close and personal, because I know what they're feeling and I know what they're thinking and I know how the deep the cuts cut.
Oh, yes. I love how that has like sort of morphed into your writing and influenced you. And also as a performer, I'm just like, yes, absolutely. It's sometimes really hard to have that process of letting go of what the audience is going to see from things. And also I think it's, for me, it's a process of letting go and also allowing the work to be really honest, right? And like not trying to control it. And you just have to sometimes take that ride. It's the joy and the terror of creating art, I think, and why it can be sometimes emotionally such high stakes to put it out in the world. Because it, once it's out there, you don't know what's going to happen to your little child that you birthed out of your brain like Athena. So
And sometimes
but
it feels like that too.
yeah, but you are such a compelling storyteller and such an incredible speaker. So I've been on panels with you. I've seen you on panels. You're one of my favorite guests to have for Cog Match at TUSCon. By the
I
way,
love
Cog
that.
Match at
Yay!
TUSCon. Yes,
I'm all
Cog.
in. I'm all in.
Yes, good. So you're so funny and so quick. And I never would have guessed that you were shy, not in a million years, because you have a real command over your audience, no matter the venue. And so you've been a panelist all over the place. You've been at a number of conventions. You've been special guest. You've been like a regular. You know, here at TUSCon, we're all like, we're special, but we're just panelists. It's a whole crew of us, right? Um, so what is something that you bring to that experience, or something that's like really you think is so important to doing this whole going out and talking about writing at conventions?
Hmm. Well, so the reason that I do it, first of all, one of the biggest reasons that I do it is because I'm a lifelong learner. I'm constantly filling my head with new things. I'm learning the latest way to articulate something about craft, about art, about
Yeah.
whatever it is. I'm always filling the hopper. I call it filling the hopper. If I don't share it, I think I might explode. So it's
Yes.
important to me I want to share that information with people. One of the reasons I'm a book coach is because I want to help other people write good books. I want to help them level up their craft. They work with me. I don't just help them with a book. I help them with their writing, their approach, all of the things wrapped around it, because I want them to level up. I always say that if you walk in the door to work with me, I want you to walk out a better writer with more knowledge. I want to share all that. So number one is that I want to share what I know. Learning and knowing things is so exciting to me. It's part of who I am as a nerd, right? It
Yeah.
just right. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is that there was a time when I was doing slam poetry, when I was doing performance poetry, where I was nervous. I would get nervous before I got up. I would be very, very
Yeah.
nervous. I would be shaky. And one day I met my mentor. So my mentor, Raven Hale, was my Cherokee mentor. She was a poet and an elder in the tribe, and she took me under her wing. Goodness knows why, because we were two women in the poetry circuit, and we resonated. And she also was a lifelong learner, and she knew that I was interested in learning, and she gave me some really good information.
Mm.
And she's the one who taught me how to walk up in front of an audience and know that I had something to say, that I really had something to say, that people wanted to hear from me, that and she gave me a little mantra, and I can tell you what mine is. Everyone who goes out in front of an audience could help relax themselves with a little bitty mantra. All they have to do is have a mantra that they repeat. Mine is, I am beautiful, I am loved, I have a secret. And I run that through my head as I walk up on the stage. And then I take a breath and I wait a moment until the audience is ready for me. She taught me that. And it has worked beautifully for me. It has made me much more comfortable. Of course, practice makes perfect. The more times you get in front of an audience, the better you get at it. But now it doesn't matter how many or how few people are in an audience. I just walk up and I do it. And coming from someone who was always a shy kid and an introvert, because I do tend to be more on the introverted side of the spectrum, because I know it's a spectrum. I think it's very powerful. And it's funny because I learned that 25, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I just read somewhere where somebody was saying, have yourself a little mantra that, that you repeat before you get up in front of an audience. So, Raven knew what she was doing.
Yes. Oh, mentors are so important. And having someone share that kind of tool with you, especially so early, is incredibly powerful. I know I am indebted to so many mentors in my life at different points in this journey, in this adventure of being an artist and having creative endeavors. But one of my great joys has been being able to become a mentor to people myself. And that is something you are doing. We've talked a little bit about the book coaching. We've talked a little bit about, you have this podcast about, it's a children's literature podcast, right?
It's a children's writing podcast, basically. So it's called Coaching Kidlit. And I bring on guests who are writers and industry folks and people who've been doing this, people who know the business side as well as the writing side. And we talk about their journey, of course, just like we're talking here a little bit about my personal experience and journey. And then we always give our writers some actionable items that they can take away from the podcast so that they can go and further their own journey by using those tips, those actionable items that we give them.
That's amazing. I knew that you were out here mentoring people, that you were helping to foster sort of what I like to call artistic community, because I've met you, I've talked to you, and we're friends. We run into each other at events, so I'm very aware of this. But I had no idea the degree to which you are mentoring people and helping the next wave of artists make their way in this world. Do you, as a mentor, is there a particular moment that it sort of hits you, that you were helping someone that really sticks with you, stands out in your memory?
There are so many moments where people just feel seen. I think it's when they feel seen. When one of my superpowers, and we all have them, we all have our own superpowers. One of my superpowers is understanding authorial intent. Very readily understanding what they're trying to do, whether they're accomplishing it on the page or not. Poetry, prose, doesn't matter. And I think this goes back to having been that introverted kid who was always watching everyone, because I used to be, this is going to sound strange, but I used to interpret for people who were speaking English to English. They weren't understanding each other. And I could hear both of them and what they were saying. And I could stop and say, I hear this from you and I hear this from you. And here's what I think you're both saying. And so I think I just have the ability to hear and to understand what people are trying to say, even if they're having trouble articulating it, whether it's through their words on the page or their words verbally. And so one of the things that I do really well, and what makes me a very successful book coach and editor, is the fact that I get authorial intent very readily. I just know what they're trying to say and try to do. And so I can help them get there even when they're not quite there.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's when you're in the midst of the creative project, when you are buried deep into the art, it can be really hard to have that kind of perspective that allows you to see where you've lost your way or where you're sort of getting bogged down because you're in the thick of it. So it all looks the same. Having that ability as a mentor and a coach to be able to look at someone's work and go, I see where you're trying to go. You're a little bit lost. Let me help you get back on track. That's really powerful. And also, the way you talk about it is incredibly kind and generous. I love hearing that because I come out of the performing arts world and I love to joke about how I went to opera school, which is true, and how I'm an opera school dropout. But opera and that world, classical performance is full of very cruel people who are cruel on purpose when they are working with young, aspiring artists. There's a real culture of, or at least when I was studying, maybe it's changed, but there's a real culture of like, we have to tear you down and crush you and make you feel as terrible as possible so that we can build you back stronger. And clearly, I disagree with that perspective. So I love hearing about this nurturing and thoughtful and kind approach because I think it's really powerful. Kindness gets pretty overlooked.
Well,
Um,
I agree. And here's the thing. We all come to whatever our endeavors are with strengths and weaknesses. We have both. So what I want to do is help the person use their strengths to build up their build on their weak, not build on them, but to improve where they're weaker.
yeah,
So I have strengths and weaknesses even in my writing still. I'm not, I need an editor. I need help. I'm not the be all end all of writing, but I know a thing or two about that, and I know how to. I can help people see their strengths. I want to help them see their strengths and celebrate those while we work to mitigate their weaknesses and improve on that side of it. So everyone comes to every art form. I don't care what it is, unless you're, born to it, which that's a rarity, right? There are
yes,
some people who sit down and can play the piano. Okay. Not everybody can do that. Most people
no,
have to learn the piano. Most people have to learn to play the piano.
yeah,
It's the same with most artistic endeavors, right? But
yes,
that person might have a very strong left hand or a very long, big stretch already. And
yes,
and it's something else that they have to work on, right? Same thing with writing. Someone may come, like, I am a character driven writer. My
mm,
characters, another one of my superpowers is character, right? Character
yeah,
and language. And so, because I'm totally a word nerd, I love words, but plot is always my area of opportunity still. And I've done some pretty good books with some nice plots, but I still have to work for that side of it
mm,
because
mm.
it doesn't come naturally.
Yes, I love this conversation because one of the things I see in popular media or with people who don't pursue artistic endeavors is there's a big assumption that you just have talent, you sit down and you make it happen. But it is a training process, it is a learning process, and it is honing what you are strong at and improving where I like you framing it as an area of opportunity, improving those places where you've got the opportunity for improvement. And honing your craft is so critical. So everyone, if you are just getting to know Sharon today, uh, you have a gorgeous blog on your website where you talk about being an author and creating, and you share some of your experiences with that. And something you share is that you started out as like what's sort of cheekily known as a pantser, without having plotting tools and an outline, but that you've learned to have some of those tools to help you with your experience of creating beautiful stories. And I love that you are both open about that, and you also talk about your evolution as a writer, because it you are evolving, and that's so beautiful as an artist, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that, okay, so there are, in the coaching realm, I have colleagues who will laugh and say that, I have Sharonisms, and they'll call them out. And one of them is that process is personal. And I say it all the time, process is personal. There's no one who can tell you how that you're doing it wrong.
Mm.
As you come to your art, your craft, the way that you come to it, the way that you learn it, that you hone it, that's personal. For me, I was 100% pantser, which we now call a discovery writer because it just sounds so much nicer. But yes, and I work with writers of all ilks, from discovery writers to hardcore planners. But I found that I still have to write my way in. I still have to sit down and write about the characters and get to know them before I know what their story is. So that's still part of my process. But honestly, my process has morphed with every single book I've written. It's been different. Every book kind of challenges me to come at it in a different way. And why that is, I don't really know. I don't care. I just trust the process. That's trusting the process. That is not a Sharonism. That's something I learned at Prescott College. And I despised it when I was told to do that over and over and over as I was working toward my thesis. And then I finally owned it. And now it's like, yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So sometimes I have to be pulled kicking and screaming to something, but yeah, so the process is personal. And I tell people all the time who come to me and they're like, well, somebody told me I was supposed to do it this way or that way, or what are the rules? What are the rules? They all want to know the rules. There are no rules. There really are no rules. There are guidelines. I like to say guidelines.
Guidelines. Yes.
There are trends. There are things like that, but there are no real rules. In fact, a lot of your breakout books are the ones that broke all the rules, right?
Right.
So your process is personal. What do you want to do? You really have to know what you're in it for, to know how you want to approach it. And you also, again, need to work with your strengths and not against them. And use everything. I tell people, if somebody tells you that they have a better process, so say you're a discovery writer and somebody says, no, you got to do this outline down to the nitty gritty, and you think that you want to try that, that's great. Do that. Try it on. Pretend you're in the store and it's a shirt that you might want to buy. Try it on. And if it doesn't fit, take that sucker off and put it back on the rack, because it's not for you. You will find your way. You will find your way.
Oh, look, I love this, because the trust the process thing, right? I think that's true of all art making, that you have to trust whatever the process is. It is so maddening that I think lots of us make quips and jokes about trusting the process when something's really on fire and going incredibly wrong, and you just have to push through and hope you come out the other side with the thing that you're trying to make happen. But there is an element of trust and fearlessness and bravery that is necessary to making art, and also a willingness to put yourself on the line to find what your process is for whatever the art is. And it could be incredibly twee and too precious, and people can get so hung up in these things. I love a method actor all day long. They produce some incredible work, but occasionally reading about their process and like, that is exhausting. I'm happy that works for you, but my heavens, how exhausting. So this is like very powerful and very true, not just of writing, but of all art making, that you have to have this like make this jump into trust with yourself, with the art, with the experience. And you're very clear and very articulate, and you put it so beautifully. I imagine that working with you as a book coach or an editor is an incredibly satisfying experience. Do you think that doing those things and pursuing teaching and coaching people has helped you improve your own work as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've said it for years. Whenever I teach, I learn.
Mm,
Whenever I teach, I learn. And it's funny too, because I'll be doing a webinar or I'll be teaching a workshop and I'll be talking about an aspect of craft, and I will suddenly realize that's what I need to do with this novel that I'm
mm,
struggling with. That's where I'm missing the oh, or oh, I got to go back to that other scene and add that in because I'm not doing that in my own work right now.
mhm, mhm.
So always. And so that that act of teaching, that you know you learn you learn in many ways. You can, and I tend to read and listen and see and watch, and then I have to send it out. I have to repeat it. I have to teach it in order to really absorb the information and really get it down deep. I have to hear it over and over, and I have to find. And one of the other reasons that I all of these books back here, these are all craft books, every single
Oh,
one of them. None of them are
oh,
novels, except for the little stack there are fiction books. The rest of these are all craft books. They're all about writing. They're all about grammar and the mechanics and the types of things that you have to do for craft. The reason, and I tell my clients, the reason I have these is so they don't have to. Because what I can do is, again, that understanding where someone is at and where they're coming from and what they're struggling with. Again, that authorial intent, but also that where they're at in their process. I'm able to then find other ways to articulate that, maybe not the Sharon way. It might be somebody else's way to articulate something to help that writer
yeah.
understand it better. So I have all these ways that I can articulate what I know or what other people know to help the person who needs to get through that next thing or
Mm,
understand
mm.
that next thing.
Yeah. Oh, I
I
I
don't know.
love
I think I
that.
took us a little off track. I don't know if I
No,
answered the initial question, but
no. You know what? Look, you answered that initial question and you took us in a great direction. And to be honest, I do tend to ask a lot of open-ended things or just hint at like, let's talk about this topic. It's how I like to pursue this because I love the conversational unfolding that happens. Honestly, one of the great joys of talking to someone else who makes art is that the conversation is always a surprise because we are going to get into these wonderful creative leaps and very abstract thinking. And I think that is marvelous and should be celebrated. And I'm like so here for it. So I love that you went in that direction and also that you talked about how you learn as you teach, how you are always honing your skill by being open. I think this is so critical in a good teacher is the willingness to be open to not having all the right answers, to being open to like having to learn. When I'm teaching sewing, I make it a point of talking about my own mistakes in a way that's not self-derogatory because that's really hard. It's very easy to be like self-deprecating about making mistakes, and when I'm teaching I don't want to put that baggage on my students. So um but I think that comes back to your bravery, right? And the honesty and being willing to trust the process. You're also trusting the process of teaching. And I think it makes you fearless. And also, I suspect, a much better teacher, to be honest. So, no question. That's just a compliment. And if
Thank
you are
you.
like looking for a book coach, maybe check out Sharon, because it sounds like you are a joy to work with. I'm certain there are also moments, because a good teacher also sometimes has to hold your feet to the fire in a loving way.
So yeah, my catchphrase is with that I am a book coach with honesty and heart. Everything I do is with honesty and heart. So I'm not going to tell you it's fabulous when
Mm,
it's not, but I will tell
yeah.
you what about it is fabulous
Yes,
and how you can make the rest of it elevate to that level.
I love that. I love
So
that.
and I just sent out a critique, a manuscript evaluation for someone, and I know they were hoping for a lot more. It's really great. It's ready to go.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
wasn't able to do that. And that's always hard because there were some great things about this. There's some really great things, but there are some things that need fixing. Well, that's
Yes,
standard, right? We expect that.
yes.
I know that they came to me because they knew in their heart that it needed more.
Mm,
So that's one thing, but it's also very hard for me because I'm like, okay, I don't want to break this person. I don't want to hurt this person. How
right.
do I deliver the news that yes, there's some great stuff here, but there's some stuff that needs work?
Mm,
Because our knee-jerk reaction to critique of any nature is to say, no, you're wrong, because it's
right,
my baby and it's my
right.
precious creation. And you know,
Yes.
it's a knee-jerk, it's a human thing to say,
Mhm.
no, no.
Yeah, yeah.
I always guide my writers to sit with the work, sit with the feedback, and look for what resonates. Look for what resonates, because that's going to be the stuff that they already knew was wrong. They already knew it needed work, right? And
Yeah.
again, people don't come to me typically I looking for just, oh yes, it's glorious, send it out into the world. That, that's not, it's not what I'm here for. And typically you can tell if somebody is coming in the door looking for just praise.
Mm,
And I tend not to work with those people. I,
mm,
I,
mm.
I'm a, it's my business, so I can be fairly selective. I have
Yes.
wonderful, I have wonderful clients. I have not had any clients that I would not work with again.
Oh,
They've all been fabulous.
that's wonderful.
I've had a couple that were difficult, but they
Oh,
came around. They came around, and we were able to work through it. But I've never fired a client. And I think a lot of that has to do with walking in the door when we first meet, because I always do an initial discovery call with my clients, or my potential writers, and we always talk about who we are, what we want, and if we click, we click, and if we don't click, I might refer them somewhere else. I might give them some references. I might find a coach that I think is a better fit.
yeah. Yeah.
But because personalities being what they are, I'm not going to be the perfect book coach for everyone. Just like my books are not the right books for every reader. Just like
Absolutely.
art isn't for everyone. It's, if
Yes.
some people love abstract, some people don't.
Yes. No, I think that's so important. It's important to remember as a teacher too. I know this is a thing I struggle with. I want to be able to reach everyone when I'm teaching, and sometimes my approach is just not going to work for somebody. It doesn't mean anything other than we're just not, you know, connecting in the right way. But it's hard to let go of that feeling and not to feel like you're not succeeding as a teacher when you can't reach somebody. So I love how clear eyed and sort of thoughtful you are about this understanding. And this is like in every answer and every moment of this conversation, that has been a real truism of you, is that you are very thoughtful. very clear-eyed. You have a great depth of understanding. I do think this is something that comes with what I like to call time and grade. So, like, as an artist, I think there is a great becoming that happens as we age. And I love watching a young artist like have great success and hit the world and like be on fire. And people are so excited about them. I think that's thrilling. But my actual favorite is an older artist, someone who's been working for a long time, because there is this clarity that happens. It's like you get forged in the fires of creation a little bit. And it's really powerful. So you've been writing and teaching and working on this creative career for 30 years,
Oh,
40
more than that.
years?
More than that. I wanted to be a writer when I grew up.
Mm.
So when I was in fourth grade, I used to write these stories. These just pages and pages and pages of stories. And I illustrated my own stories as well. So, and I wanted to be an actress and a writer when I grew up. And everybody told me that I couldn't make money doing either of those things. And that, how you know the story.
Yeah.
You know the story.
Yeah.
So I'm not
Yeah.
gonna belabor that. But I kept writing and I kept doing like the poetry and all of that. I was writing let's see. Slam was for me 1994. I think it was about 1994 when I was in Slam. But prior to that, I was already writing, and I was writing and getting published on the page. I was a page poet before that. So in the 90s, I was writing. In the 80s, I was writing. And right around 1995, I was taking a class because I was always I worked and went to school at the same time. I was one of those people. And I was taking a class, and it was a creative writing class. And we had to do certain things. We had to write a poem. We had to write this and a that and a that and this. And there was one point where the teacher said, you have a choice for this next project. You can do this, or you can write the first chapter of a book. I've never written a book. I want to write the first chapter of a book. So I sat down and I spilled out a novel in 8 weeks. It was horrible. Don't get me wrong. It was not a good, there were a lot of things wrong with it. But the world was fun and fabulous, and the characters were really fun and creative, and I just knew this was something. All of a sudden, I want my characters on the bigger stage. I'm not going to write shorts, because before that I had moved into short story a bit and had some short stories published, but I was like, no, I need this bigger stage for my characters so they can really stretch out. And that novel was written in 1995. But there was so much joy. Like when I was writing the dangerous parts, I would get up and pace the room, and I would get really excited. And I couldn't even sit at the computer. I had an old 8088 back then, which means I could push the button to hit save. And I had plenty of time to pace the room because, you could make a cup of tea and a sandwich before it saved. Yeah, it's that long ago. So I just knew that I wanted to do something with this, but I didn't know how to fix it. And that is when I decided that the rest of my schooling was going to be all, I was an English major. So I finished my AA, and I went in and got my English degree. And then I went on to get my master's in creative writing. It wasn't until I got the master's that I learned how to write a novel, really write a novel and fix a novel. And the first novel that was published was not that novel, but I did go back later and fix it. And it is now published, and it's a very popular children's book called The Nellingstones.
Yes.
And I have a lot of parents who love that book because they're reluctant readers were drawn to it and liked it so much they came back for another, and so now there's a sequel. And so I wrote a duology in that world with those characters. But at the time, I didn't know how to structure a novel. I didn't know how to ensure that my character had full agency. There were a lot of things that I didn't know how to do right or well that I had to learn. Oh, that's why this is not working, right? So but I haven't really looked back. I still write poetry. I still write short stories. I still write flash fiction, as you know, from Blood from a Rose, and I have a copy right here. Blood from a Rose, because it's October, and I thought, I'm just gonna hold this up.
We are here for the spooky.
Yeah, this is all short stories, flash fiction, and poetry, but it's all very dark. With a nice dose of humor. I'm told that the demon stories are worth the cost of entrance alone, because I've put my two demons in hell as the odd couple.
All right, I love that. I love that they are the odd couple. That is delightful. And also like my cup of tea. So we'll drop that link for everyone in the chat so you two can like pick up a copy. And also I dropped a link to the Nellig Stones. If you have a young person that you want to give a book to, look, buy Sharon's books. Right. Yeah. So we have a question from my dear friend, Bill Barden, who's also an author, in the comments. And Bill asks, what's your favorite genre to read? So you write speculative fiction. You can book coach speculative fiction and
narrative nonfiction, and memoir. Yeah.
And memoir. All right.
Memoir.
So
narrative nonfiction and memoir basically come in the same camp, but yes.
Okay. All right. So if I ever decide to write my memoirs, I need to work with you, clearly. But what's your favorite genre to read?
So I'm gonna, this is one of those ones that I'm gonna couch with the thing that I always tell people is like when people ask me what's the favorite book you've written, I always say, like my children, I have no favorites.
Right.
I'm an eclectic and voracious reader. I read somewhere between 75 and 100 books a year, and I read everything pretty much. There are some things I don't read. I don't read graphic violence, graphic sex. That is not for me. That's not my cup of tea, if you will.
Yeah.
I do love a good fantasy. Dark fantasy is one of those things, something like a Nettle and Bone, which is not your standard, those kinds of books. I'm an Aaron Morgenstern fan. It's Aaron Morgenstern, right? Starless Sea, and those kinds of things that are not your standard fantasies, I'm very drawn to. I like a good science fiction, but I'm like right now reading The Radium Girls, which is actually making me really angry. But that is not fiction at all. I read a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of memoir. I read children's books from picture books on up. I just finished reading Holes by Louis Sacher again, because I am coaching someone who's writing middle grade, and I wanted to use it as an example. I just read all the things. When I was a kid, I used to get car sick all the time because I read all the signs as we were driving by. And I tried to read in the car and I would get car sick, and my parents hated it. But I just have always been a very voracious, but very eclectic reader. Eclectic reader. I read all the things. I even read some horror. I'm not a big body horror person. Again, not the graphic stuff. Although Chuck Wendigo's Black River Orchard?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I did read that. That was pretty creepy. But yeah, mostly speculative fiction probably is the bulk of where I probably land. But that's such a broad category, and I'll read a good magical realism or literary fiction, or literary. It's got to be the right one. It's got to be the
Yeah.
right thing. But yeah, one of the reasons that I went ahead and got certified to coach all the things is because I read all the things. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, there's wisdom, right, in this modern world that you're supposed to specialize and be very like narrow your focus, especially on social media, just like do the same thing and present the same thing. And um personally, I can't do it. I can't do it. I love too much. And I find that art is more fecund for me when I allow myself to dabble in all the things that are giving me joy. And it's very much the same way for reading. I I used to say, "Oh, I don't read horror," and then my dear friends, Bill, I think it was Bill, was like, "Don't you read like vampire novels?" But so being open to and willing to dabble and enjoy and explore all of the things that give you joy and like get your brain working as an artist, I think is really critical. I think that advice to narrow your focus can be rubbish. That sometimes you need to narrow your focus on a project to get through the project to focus on it. But that in your experience as an artist, it's important to be broad in your taste. And I love that you're so eclectic, but also I was like, yes, oh, I love to read that too. Oh, no wonder we're friends. We like very similar things reading wise. Ah,
Yeah.
I'd love to see your book list and your
I
bookshelves and
have a
just do the
Goodreads.
fiction.
I have a Goodreads. You can go see all the books that I
Oh,
read on
oh,
Goodreads.
oh,
Please peruse to your heart's content.
yes.
No, I read. I've always been that way.
Mm,
As a kid, I was always reading 2, 3 books at a time. I still do that, which I think also serves me as a book coach because one more superpower that I do have is that I can keep my clients' books and their stories and or their memoirs or
mm,
whatever it is in my brain all at once.
yeah.
So when I'm reading a client's work, can say, wait a minute, back on page, I got to go back because I know we've already said that, or no, you said something different. And, I can find those continuity issues very readily, but also
Oh,
because I know their characters, I know their stories, I can be working on more than one book at a time because I don't get lost in it. And I think that goes back to the fact that, and maybe there's something going on. Maybe I'm a little neurospicy. I don't know. I've never been tested, but I will say that that ability serves me extremely well. Although
mm,
when I was a kid, people thought it was weird. Uh, you know, it, that's really strange, but it serves me well. And it's the way that
mm,
my brain works. And I just
uh,
like to go with the way things work. And
yes. Yes.
that's,
It it is a
yes.
superpower. It is a superpower.
Yeah, I can't remember your name. I won't remember your name later if I've met you, but boy, will I know the story you're writing if you're writing a story. So
You will
there you
remember
go.
the book.
Yeah,
When
I'll remember your face and I'll remember the book.
when you are doing this, where you're reading multiple things at a time, do you read different things or are you reading like so I will full disclosure, I will have like The Lord of the Rings as sort of like my unwinding read at night, and then I'll be reading like urban fantasy when I'm working and I have like an audiobook going, and then I'll be reading my book club pick, and there'll be different things, and I can kind of keep them straight because they're very different flavors. Is that helpful to you, or can you just like whatever it is, you can keep it
It's
straight?
whatever. It tends to be whatever it is, but it's also what am I in the mood for sometimes.
Mm.
Sometimes I'll have 2 or 3 books going because I've started one in the living room and I have one or two by the bed,
Oh
and
my God.
or I'm looking for something for an example for a writer, and so I get caught up in the story, and so I'm reading that. But I sometimes it's also that, like, something like the Radium Girls, I'm really angry right now at the way they were treated, and so I
Terrible.
might need to take a break and go read something else.
Mm. Hmm.
um, so sometimes it's that, sometimes it's I'm too on the edge of my seat for the character right now. I don't want to see what happens next. I need to go read something else. And sometimes but most of the time it's just that I like to keep multiple stories in my head at any given time. And it doesn't necessarily, I don't think there's ever a specific mix, if you will.
Yeah.
But I will say that I'm often reading a nonfiction, something that's fiction, and maybe a children's book, more age category down in children's, like middle grade, at the same time. I do that a lot, and that's because that's just what I'm interested in. And I'm every time somebody makes a book recommendation, I'm like, oh, let me go check that out. And so I always have this, I have piles and piles of books around my house. There
Oh,
are books in
yeah.
every room. I have stacks to be read. I have library books. I just got an overdue notice on one that's, I've got to get it back because, and then I find that I have so many library books, I have to read them in a specific order so I don't get overdue notices too
Yes.
rapidly. So
Yes.
I can't help myself. And I rarely watch other types of media like television
Mm,
and things
mhm.
like that. I do. I mean, I finally finished watching Wednesday, the new season
Oh,
of
yes.
Wednesday, which
Yes.
made me so happy.
It's so
But
good.
yeah, so, and things like that. I like kind of the unusual shows like that. But I give me an option of this or that. And if one of those is a book, I'm in almost always choose the book. It's just
Yes.
how my brain, that's just what I want to do. Now, I do a lot of other arts and crafts and things like that. I like, I've done costuming and sewing and all sorts of things of that nature because I love to dabble in all the things. But I think that's also feeding the hopper.
Yes.
And as you were talking about how the idea of niching and how people say you should niche as an artist, I don't think that serves. I think that
Yeah.
you can get too into how it's done, how everybody's doing it
Mhm.
and what's been done and what's the people who are the most creative, I think, are the ones who are taking parts from other things and combining them. And
Yes.
I think that's why we see a lot of people who are writing mashups now. We're seeing so
Mhm.
many more mashups of genre now than we used to see. It's not a clear, I'm writing this, I'm writing that. There's just all these wonderful mashups where you're
Yes.
getting combinations of genre and mix and match. And that is exciting to me to see the creativity come that way as well.
Yes.
So I tell
Yes.
my writers, yes, especially if you're writing for kids, you must read in your genre, you must read in
Yeah.
your age category to a point, but don't forget everything else that's out there that might be a really good example of how to structure a novel or how to approach viewpoint or
Right.
how to get into backstory in a way where the reader doesn't even realize they fell into backstory, but
Mm.
they're right there with it. What are those techniques? We study the masters. Every book has the potential to be a mentor text. We study the masters when we paint. We study other people who've come before us who've done costuming or couture. We should be studying people who write and do it well and seeing how they do it. We don't want to copy what they do. We want to
No.
see how they've done it and use those techniques. And I think that's one of the really key things that I try to teach people to do when they're reading other work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love this because I agree entirely that it's very important to uh enrich your artistic life in this way so that you can have fertile soil mentally from which to create your own piece. And it's something that really strikes me when I am looking at artists from the past, the salon experience of surrounding yourself with other artists and getting together in the evenings at a cafe or someone's salon or their home and just hanging out and talking about art, basically. And maybe you're a wild crowd and there's a lot of drinking, or maybe there's a lot of sipping tea and like passing the scones, but you're no matter what the vibe is, you are sharing that conversation about the work you're working on, about what your fellows, your friends are working on. And the medium, the genre doesn't matter. It's the sharing of perspective, and the sharing of approach, because I feel like, yes, genre is important as in terms of marketing, and genre is important in terms of like it helps me as a mood reader know what I want to like pick up and what I want to go to. But a book is a book, a story is a story. At the end of the day, I don't care about the genre, I care about the quality of the story. And as an artist, I don't care about the genre, I care about creating something that's honest for my intent. And then I'm going to apply genre to it later for marketing purposes. So I think being able to come together and have that like wonderful, fertile kind of conversation experience with other art and other artists. It's really critical. And it's something that I think is so powerful at conventions,
I was
right?
going to say we've circled right back to where we started, because
Yes.
that's one of the reasons we do it. We want
Yeah.
to hear what other people are doing, what they're saying. I think podcasts, there's a lot of really good podcasts out there about it, about what people are doing and how they're doing it, that you can listen in on. That's why I do one. That's why I bring on my guests. Again, yes, I'm serving the community by doing the podcast, but I'm also getting to talk to all these amazing people.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
a win-win, right? So it's a win-win for everybody. And I love that. I love
Absolutely.
the win-win-wins.
Oh my gosh, no, look, this is my favorite thing. And it, I teased Beth Cato about this at Worldcon. She's so wonderful. I love her as a person, as a writer, as a baker. Love her baking, so good. But she moved across country, and I was like, I'm desperate to have conversations about art with you, and now I'm not going to see you at the local conventions anymore. Will you come on my show? And I had to create an entire interview show just so I could have a conversation with Beth. And so I tell her this is all her fault, right? But being able to meet with each other at conventions and be on panels, I think the best panels and the best conventions and the best experiences of that ilk are when artists are able to have a really wonderful organic conversation on the panel, like to the topic. I want people to be around, near, under, and all the prepositional phrases of the topic. But also I like when there's a bit of room so that the people speaking to it can take it in interesting ways. I think that's incredibly powerful. Yeah.
Well, that's why I like this. Has been a joy for me because it's been so organic, and we've just, we didn't have an established topic. Now, when I do the podcast, we at least have a topic that we're going to speak to, but we do keep it very organic. I
Yeah.
don't have specific questions laid out ahead of time. In fact, I'm always scribbling little notes. Okay, I've got to
Yes.
ask about that and circle back to that,
Yes.
that sort of
Yes.
thing. I think being an interviewer is, your job as an interviewer is to keep the conversation going no matter where it goes, but to
Yeah.
also kind of circle back and hit on those topics that are most meaningful, or that you think you can bring out more about for your audience.
Absolutely. I agree entirely. It's what I strive to do when I'm interviewing. And I think that the permission to write notes for yourself as an interviewer is very important. FYI, everyone, if you want some behind the scenes nitty gritty, being able to either keep mental note or write notes is very critical. People ask me often, is there a list of questions? And generally speaking, there isn't, except at the very end where there is this very, weird, nerdy set of questions. But I don't want to have preconceived notions, because this beautiful serendipity, the wonderful spontaneity is the magic. And Sharon, you have a gift for this. You have been such a pleasure to talk to. I knew you would be, to be honest. Like, I mean, I've known you for years. I was like, oh yeah, no, we're going to have a good time. But I cannot stress to everyone, like, look, Sharon is marvelous on panels. If you see Sharon at a convention on a panel and you're even moderately interested in the topic, you should just go, because it will be good.
Thank you.
It will be good. You always bring your A game. I've never seen you be anything other than stellar on a panel, and so insightful. But also, you are just so warm naturally, and you just make people feel incredibly welcome into the space, which I think is a real gift. Clearly, you are doing that as well as a book coach. You're certainly bringing that warmth and that passion to your stories, to your writing. It's right there on the page. Even if you're not doing a Mary Sue thing, it's not you on the page, but you're still the creator of these worlds, and you are still bringing this kind of beautiful, organic warmth to your storytelling that I think is really beautiful. And so I encourage everyone to check out Sharon's books, to go check out the podcast, to check out panels. Look, come to TuskCon, meet Sharon in person. It's a really good time.
We have fun.
Um, we do. We have a wonderful time. And this is, by the by, everyone, this is your moment. If you have Sharon, some of you have been very good and you've been posting your questions all along.
I can't hear you. I think I've lost my audio. Not hearing you. Well, I can hear tested my AirPods and I can hear them, but I can't hear you. Can you hear me? You can't hear me. Hmm. I don't know. Can you hear me? Hello, 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 hello. Goodness. Hello? Hmm. Dun, 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 dun. Hmm. Oh, well, that's good. Hi there, Joseph. You can hear me? That's something. All right. So, as long as y'all can hear me, and apparently there's a problem on the other end. So, what's coming up next for me is that I'm going to be at LosCon in the end of, let's see, when is that? The end of November. I'm going to be at, before that, I'll be at TusCon, and that's earlier in the month. That's, I believe, the first part of November. And you can find me at SharonSkinner.com, which is my author website. You can find me at bookcoachingbysharon.com, which is my book coaching and freelance editing site. You can find the podcast at Coaching Kidlet, beep, beep, coachingkidlet.com, or stream it on anywhere where you are listening to your favorite podcasts. And I also do a podcast with the Brick Cave Media, where Bruce Davis and I, who are author colleagues in the Brick Cave Media, I don't know, what do you call it? Stables? That's a weird way to put it. But we do a podcast regularly. You can find that on my author site or on the Brick Cave site. And December 6th, we will be at the Mesa Book Festival, which is going to be a one-day festival in downtown Mesa. So that's pretty much the rest of my year. And thank you, Madam Askew, for having me on. This has been so much fun, and I so appreciate being here. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your weekend. Bye for now.